Imagine constantly walking on eggshells, second-guessing yourself, and feeling drained every time you interact with someone. You start to wonder, is it me? Am I overreacting? But deep down, you know something isn't right. Toxic relationships aren't always obvious at first. They creep in through subtle manipulation, disrespect, and control, leaving you questioning your worth. Whether it's a partner, a friend, or even a family member, the emotional toll can be overwhelming. But how do you recognize the signs before it's too late? Today I'm sharing 6 key warning signs of toxic relationships so you can protect your peace and regain control of your happiness. If you're ready to spot the red flags and break free from toxic cycles, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss out on life-changing insights like this. Let's dive in. Have you ever found yourself constantly apologizing, even when you're not sure what you did wrong? Do you feel like no matter how hard you try, it's never enough? If so, you might be dealing with a toxic relationship rooted in constant criticism and manipulation, one of the most damaging red flags that can slowly erode your self-worth. It doesn't always start with obvious insults. In fact, toxic people often disguise their criticism as helpful advice or concern. Maybe it's a partner who constantly points out your flaws, a friend who makes backhanded compliments, or a family member who downplays your achievements. You get excited about something, maybe a promotion, a new goal, or even just a hobby you enjoy, and instead of support, you're met with sarcasm or dismissive remarks. Oh, that's nice, but don't get ahead of yourself. You're really wearing that? I'm just being honest, someone had to tell you. Over time, these little jabs add up. They make you doubt yourself. You start hesitating before making decisions because you've been conditioned to believe you're never quite good enough. This is what toxic people thrive on, keeping you in a cycle of self-doubt so they can maintain control. And the worst part, when you finally stand up for yourself, they flip the script. Suddenly you're too sensitive, overreacting, or taking things the wrong way. This is gaslighting, another form of manipulation that makes you question your own reality. And it doesn't stop there. Toxic individuals are masters at making you feel guilty for things that aren't your fault. They shift blame, twist words, and make every issue seem like your problem. You bring up something that hurts you, and instead of accountability, they make you feel like the villain. I can't believe you're making a big deal out of this. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. They play the victim, leaving you feeling confused and guilty for even speaking up. What makes this cycle even more dangerous is that it's gradual. At first, you might brush off the comments, telling yourself they didn't mean it that way. You justify their behavior because maybe they had a rough day or grew up in a difficult environment. But the truth is, everyone has bad days, yet not everyone resorts to tearing others down. Real love, real friendship, real family support doesn't look like this. So how do you break free? First, recognize that love should never feel like a constant battle to prove your worth. The right people in your life will uplift you, not make you feel small. Set boundaries and stick to them. When someone repeatedly criticizes or manipulates you, call it out. If they refuse to change, walk away. You do not owe anyone unlimited chances at the cost of your mental and emotional well-being. Most importantly, start trusting yourself again. Toxic people spend so much time making you doubt yourself that you forget the strength and wisdom you already have. Rebuild that trust by surrounding yourself with those who see your value, not those who diminish it. You deserve relationships that feel safe, supportive, and empowering. If something deep inside you is telling you that something isn't right, listen to that voice. It's not overreacting, it's protecting you. Have you ever felt like no matter how many times you say no, it doesn't really matter? Like your feelings, your space, and your limits are invisible to someone who claims to care about you? If so, you might be dealing with one of the biggest red flags in a toxic relationship, a complete lack of respect for boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they're the healthy lines that protect your peace, your energy, and your self-respect. But in a toxic relationship, those lines are constantly ignored, pushed, or completely bulldozed over. It might start small, someone teasing you about something you've asked them to stop joking about, reading your messages without permission, or pressuring you into things that make you uncomfortable. At first, you tell yourself it's not a big deal. They probably didn't mean it that way. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But the truth is, when someone truly respects you, they respect your boundaries without making you feel guilty for having them. Toxic people, on the other hand, see boundaries as obstacles. Instead of honoring them, they test them. You tell them you need space, and they find ways to make you feel selfish for asking. Oh, so now you'd have time for me. You say no to something, and they keep pushing until you finally give in just to avoid the argument. You try to set limits, and suddenly, you're the difficult one, the cold one, or the ungrateful one. Over time, you start to feel like having boundaries at all is a burden. You learn to shrink yourself, to sacrifice your comfort just to keep the peace. But here's the thing, if maintaining a relationship requires you to constantly betray yourself, that's not peace. That's control. And it doesn't just happen in romantic relationships. A friend who always expects you to drop everything for them but is never there when you need them. A family member who invades your personal life and dismisses your feelings when you ask for space. A partner who ignores your discomfort and convinces you that love means always saying yes. These are all examples of boundary violations. The worst part is that toxic people don't just ignore your boundaries, they make you feel guilty for having them in the first place. They twist the narrative so that your need for personal space becomes selfish, your desire for independence becomes distance, and your refusal to be manipulated becomes coldness. But here's the truth, setting boundaries is not an act of rejection, it's an act of self-respect. The right people will not punish you for protecting your energy. They will not make you feel guilty for saying no. And they will not need endless explanations just to understand why something is important to you. So what can you do? First, recognize that you are allowed to have limits, no matter how much someone else tries to dismiss them. You don't owe anyone access to every part of you. Your time, your space, your emotions, they are yours to protect. Second, stand firm. Toxic people will push and test you, but the more you reinforce your boundaries, the clearer it becomes that you are not someone who can be manipulated. And finally, pay attention to how people react when you set boundaries. Those who truly care about you will respect them. Those who don't will try to break them. At the end of the day, a relationship without respect for boundaries is not a relationship built on love, it's built on control. And you deserve better than that. Have you ever felt like you're the only one putting in the effort while the other person just takes and takes? Like no matter how much you do, it's never enough, and yet they still find a way to make you feel guilty. This is what happens in one-sided relationships, where control and imbalance replace mutual care and respect. At first, it might not seem obvious. Maybe you're always the one initiating conversations, making plans, or showing up when they need support. But when the roles are reversed, they're suddenly too busy, uninterested, or emotionally unavailable. You tell yourself, maybe they're just going through something. Maybe if I try harder, they'll change. But that day never comes because the truth is they have no intention of changing. A toxic relationship is not just about what someone does to you, it's also about what they don't do for you. They don't listen when you talk about your feelings. They don't put in effort when it's your turn to need support. They don't acknowledge the sacrifices you make to keep the relationship going. Over time, you start convincing yourself that this is just the way they are, that you're asking for too much. But deep down, you know relationships aren't supposed to feel this exhausting. The most dangerous part of a one-sided relationship is that it doesn't just drain your energy, it makes you doubt your worth. Toxic people have a way of making you feel like the problem. If you express frustration, they make you feel guilty. If you ask for more effort, they call you demanding. If you try to pull away, they suddenly act sweet just enough to keep you hooked. This is control. It's not love, it's not friendship, and it's not how healthy relationships work. Control can show up in different ways. Sometimes it's emotional manipulation, making you feel responsible for their happiness while they take no responsibility for yours. Other times it's financial control, where one person makes all the decisions, leaving the other dependent and powerless. In some cases, it's social control, isolating you from friends and family so they can be the only important person in your life. No matter the form, the goal is the same: to make sure they always have power over you while you keep bending to their needs. And here's the harsh truth: you cannot fix a relationship by being the only one trying. Love, respect, and effort should be mutual, not conditional. You should not have to beg for basic decency. You should not have to constantly prove your worth. A relationship, whether romantic, friendship, or family, should never feel like a test you are always failing. So what can you do? First, recognize the pattern. A healthy relationship is built on reciprocity, both people giving, supporting, and valuing each other. If you're the only one doing the work, ask yourself, what am I really getting from this? Second, set boundaries. Stop over-explaining, stop over-giving, and stop making excuses for someone who refuses to meet you halfway. And finally, understand that walking away is not losing, it's choosing yourself. You do not need to stay in a relationship that makes you feel small just because you're afraid of being alone. At the end of the day, love should not be a constant effort to prove your worth. The right people will see your value without you having to fight for it. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely drained, like every ounce of your energy was sucked out of you? Do you find yourself anxious before meeting someone, rehearsing what to say just to avoid setting them off? If so, you might be trapped in a relationship that's emotionally exhausting and filled with anxiety, a clear sign of toxicity. Healthy relationships should bring a sense of peace, not constant stress. But when you're in a toxic dynamic, every interaction feels like a test, and you're always on edge, trying to avoid conflict or disapproval. You overanalyze text messages, rethink conversations, and carry a constant fear of upsetting them, even when you've done nothing wrong. That's because toxic people create an environment where your emotions are never stable. One moment, they're kind and affectionate, the next, they're distant, critical, or angry. This unpredictability keeps you hooked, always chasing the good moments and hoping things will get better. But here's the truth. A relationship that constantly drains you is not just unhealthy, it's dangerous to your mental and emotional well-being. Toxic people don't just cause stress, they thrive on keeping you in a state of emotional instability. They use guilt to make you feel responsible for their mood. If they're upset, it's somehow your fault. If you're upset, you're too sensitive or making things worse. You start to doubt your own feelings, thinking maybe I am overreacting. Maybe if I just try harder, things will be okay. But deep down, you know it's never enough. And the worst part, it's exhausting. Constantly walking on eggshells, monitoring their emotions, and suppressing your own needs takes a toll on you. You're always emotionally available for them, but when you need comfort or support, they disappear. It's a one-way street where your feelings don't seem to matter as much as theirs. Over time, this drains your energy, affects your confidence, and makes you feel emotionally numb. You become so used to surviving in the chaos that peace starts to feel unfamiliar. This cycle is not love. It's emotional manipulation. A person who truly cares about you will never make you feel anxious about their next move. They won't punish you with silence, guilt-trip you into compliance, or make you feel like you're constantly failing. They will not drain you, they will recharge you. So how do you break free? First, pay attention to how you feel after spending time with someone. Do you feel lighter, or do you feel exhausted? Do you feel heard, or do you feel dismissed? Your emotions are not lying to you. Second, start setting boundaries. If someone consistently drains your energy without giving anything in return, you have every right to step back. And finally, remind yourself that love is not supposed to feel like a battlefield. Real relationships bring comfort, not confusion. At the end of the day, the people in your life should make you feel safe, valued, and at peace. If a relationship constantly makes you anxious, it's not love, it's a trap. And you deserve better. Have you ever noticed that someone in your life gets uncomfortable when you spend time with others? Maybe they make snide remarks about your friends, guilt-trip you for not prioritizing them, or subtly push you away from the people who truly care about you. If so, you might be dealing with one of the most dangerous signs of a toxic relationship: isolation and alienation. At first, it might not seem like a big deal. They casually say things like, "I just don't think your friends really understand you," or "Your family is so controlling. I don't know why you listen to them." Maybe they act hurt when you spend time with others, making you feel guilty for not choosing them instead. And little by little, without even realizing it, your world starts to shrink. The people who used to be your support system feel further away, and soon the only person left in your corner is the one who's been pushing everyone else out. This is not love. This is control. Toxic people isolate you because they know that when you're alone, you're easier to manipulate. They don't want you to have outside opinions that might open your eyes to their behavior. They don't want you to have people reminding you of your worth. They don't want you to feel like you have an escape, because if you have no one else, you're more likely to stay. And the scariest part, this kind of isolation doesn't always look obvious. Sometimes it's disguised as protecting you. They tell you they're only looking out for you, that certain people in your life are toxic, and that they're the only one who truly understands you. They slowly turn you against the people who would actually help you see the truth. And by the time you realize what's happening, you already feel disconnected from everyone who once supported you. This kind of manipulation can happen in any relationship, romantic, friendship, or even family. Maybe it's a controlling partner who demands all your time and makes you feel guilty for having a life outside of them. Maybe it's a jealous friend who criticizes everyone else in your circle, making you second-guess your other relationships. Or maybe it's even a family member who constantly belittles your friends or partner, trying to control who you're allowed to be close to. No matter the situation, the goal is always the same: to make you feel like you have no one but them. And here's what makes this so dangerous: when you're isolated, it becomes harder to see the toxicity. You no longer have anyone to validate your feelings or remind you that you deserve better. You start believing their version of reality. You become dependent on them for emotional support, even when they're the very person causing your distress. That's why isolation is one of the most powerful weapons of control. It keeps you trapped. So how do you break free? First, recognize the pattern. Ask yourself, have I lost touch with people I used to be close to? Do I feel guilty or anxious when I spend time with others? Does this person make me feel like I'm being disloyal for maintaining outside relationships? If the answer is yes, it's time to take a step back. Second, reconnect with your support system. Toxic people make you feel like no one else cares about you, but that's a lie. The people who truly love you are still there, waiting for you to reach out. And third, set boundaries. Anyone who tries to cut you off from the world is not someone who has your best interests at heart. At the end of the day, love should feel freeing, not suffocating. You deserve relationships that encourage you to grow, not ones that shrink your world down to just one person. If someone is trying to isolate you, don't let them, because the people who genuinely care about you will never ask you to choose between them and your happiness. Have you ever felt like no matter how much someone hurts you, they always find a way to pull you back in? Maybe they apologize just enough to make you stay, promise to change, or remind you of the good times, only for everything to go right back to the way it was. If so, you might be trapped in one of the most toxic cycles of all, the pattern of false apologies and empty promises. Toxic people are not always cruel outright. In fact, the reason so many people stay in unhealthy relationships is because of the moments when things seem good. They know exactly what to say when you're on the edge of leaving. The moment they feel you pulling away, they suddenly become kind, affectionate, and apologetic. I know I messed up, but I swear I'll change. You mean everything to me. I don't want to lose you. I just get overwhelmed sometimes, but I'm really working on it. And just like that, you give them another chance because you want to believe them. You want to believe that the person who hurt you is the same person who can heal you. But here's the truth: apologies without change mean nothing. Saying I'm sorry is easy. Making real changes takes effort. And toxic people don't actually want to change, they just want to keep you from leaving. So the cycle continues. Things are good for a while, then slowly the same behaviors creep back in. The criticism, the manipulation, the control, it all comes back, and before you know it, you're right back where you started, waiting for the next apology that never leads to real change. And the worst part, this cycle rewires your mind to accept mistreatment. Over time, you start focusing more on the apologies than on the harm being done. You hold onto the potential of change rather than the reality of the situation. And every time they say they'll do better, you convince yourself that this time maybe they really mean it. But deep down, you know the pattern. You've seen it before. And it always ends the same way. This cycle is not just painful, it's dangerous. It keeps you stuck in a relationship that drains you, manipulates your emotions, and makes you second-guess your own worth. It makes you feel like walking away would be a mistake, even when staying is what's truly hurting you. But here's what you need to understand: you don't owe anyone endless chances at the cost of your peace. Someone who truly loves you will not just promise to change, they will take consistent actions to prove it. At the end of the day, love is not about words, it's about consistent actions. If someone truly values you, they will show it, not just say it. And if they keep breaking the same promises, it's time to stop believing them. Because real love doesn't trap you in an endless cycle of hurt and hope, it sets you free.